Okay, great. Thank you. So welcome. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the special executive board meeting of Saturday, April 26th at 10 a.m. And we'll do introductions. So Mark Everett, chair of the NCAC, and we'll go Gary
Billingsley.
Secretary. Okay. Randall. Just
Randall Cook. Here.
And Alex.
Alex Clark, the vice chair.
Great, thanks, Alex. Yeah, Michael.
Michael Beachley. I have no conflicts today.
And you're the parliamentarian.
I am the parliamentarian. Pro tem, by the way. For the time being.
And Nancy.
Nancy Vandell, chair of bylaws subcommittee.
Okay, and Chris.
Chris Sokowski, treasurer, and I have no conflicts.
Okay, great.
Oh, and I have no conflicts.
So you're jumping ahead. So everybody, I have no conflicts. If you can just say that, if you haven't said it already.
I have no conflicts.
Okay.
No conflicts.
Okay.
No conflicts.
All right. And Gary, you already commented on that probably.
Yes, no conflict.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, the agenda, hopefully you had a chance to look at the agenda. Pretty straightforward here. We're going to start with the PP&R discussion with the bylaws subcommittee. And then at about 11:35 or maybe, well, we'll see how long this takes, but we've got member comments and then closing remarks before we wrap up. So I don't see any visitors, any audience or visitors here now. So I think with that, we'll just turn it over to, I don't know, Nancy, how you saw this going, a conversation. Are we just, maybe you can tell me, we're going part by part through this or?
Yeah, I think we have a presentation
Okay.
that Tom prepared. Tom Sipe was not able to join us today, but that he prepared that we'd like to go through. And then if you need to see the document itself, I have it queued up. But everything's in the meeting packet in case you want to see it, the latest versions. And Michael, in addition to being our NCAC parliamentarian, of course, is one of our subcommittee members. So he'll also be presenting from that perspective. But we want to focus today on things that are of particular interest to the executive board. As I was going through the presentation, though, yesterday, pretty much everything affects the executive board. It's really the policies, procedures, and references are primarily intended to help the executive board function and to give tools for the executive board. So that's why we wanted, as we talked about in our meetings when we scheduled this, we wanted to be able to get your input directly, since you guys are the ones who are most affected by it. It is still a very in progress drafty draft. We're getting toward the end, hopefully, but we can make changes depending on what you want to see. But we do think it's going to be helpful. Our intention is to have this be a helpful document, living document going forward. So the bylaws, it's something that's a brand new document. The NCAC has never had it before. Sometimes they're called standing rules in Robert's Rules of Order, but they're intended to be more easily changed than the bylaws. They still require a vote of the membership, but only a 50% simple majority as opposed to the 2/3 majority. They still do need to go through the county. Sarah's been kept apprised of this as it's gone forward, and she's provided some input. But she does intend at some point to put it through the county attorney. So our intent is to have feedback sessions with the membership, and we've had one. We had 3 people attend, 2 people stick through it, and we heard some good comments at the membership meeting in April about it. That I think a lot of trust has been built up through the bylaws process and just the workings over the past year and a half. So I'm hopeful that we'll you know, this is something that should pass easily at our special meeting, membership meeting on May 31st. But you never know. I mean, our bylaws adoption meeting went 4 hours and we thought we were
Yeah.
pretty close there too. So I think our main issue is going to be getting 15 people to the meeting to be able to adopt it. But I think we would consider that a success. I also want to thank each of you for your input so far on this document, and we'll be going to you further for more input. So I think without further ado, we'll just, I'll start sharing it. And what I'm going to do today is share my whole screen so I can go back and forth if something comes up between the document itself and the bylaws, as well as the presentation. So let's see how I can do that. Do my whole screen. Looks like I can. Yeah, I think I can. Okay, so now you're looking at my Zoom screen, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, can you see my whole screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or with
Yeah.
everything? Okay,
Yeah.
good. I don't usually do my whole screen. So this is the presentation, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
run it because I want to be able to go back and forth with it. So it's not going to be quite as nice looking. But let me try to get these, all of you people out of the way here. So what we have is, again, this is from Tom, but this is related to the latest version of the policies, procedures, and references of R31. We're up to revision 31 now, and I think Tom's actually working on revision 32. So I have this live, and I have the change tracking set to, in case we have any changes that need to be made. I also have a live version of the document itself where we can do some editing. And it's not Tom's document, it's a separate one, so we're not interfering with the main source. So what he's done is created hopefully a simplified version where we go through the main thought, and then the next slide will go through more of the detail so that we kind of drill down. And I think that's pretty much what this is saying. So again, these are 3 sections. I'm used to dealing more with a standing rule kind of thing, or it can also be called policies and procedures, where everything's in one area. But this document is set up so that we have policies, which are directive statements of guidelines for actions, separate from procedures, which are more detailed, step-by-step instructions kind of thing to facilitate the operation of the NCAC. And then we have references that list or define terms that are used in the policies and procedures. So it's things are broken up. And so I think what the ultimate document is going to have pointers where you can click and get from, say, on the honor system, get from the policy for that to the procedure for that. I'm still wrapping my head around that a little bit, but so the items that we have that we feel are ready to go have a check mark by them, and items with an X we're still have under discussion. We have terms. Shall means is required to do, should means is advised to do, and may means it's permitted to do. We don't have cans, we don't have musts. So Tom is a professional editor who has an amazing resume, and I think some of you are aware he actually headed up the Wi-Fi standards 802.11, IEEE 802.11 Wi-Fi standards, and was also one of the main people on the Bluetooth standards and edited their documents. So he's pretty amazing. So we're going into the policies first. And I'm just going to go through fairly quickly. So policy 1 is something that Wyatt Angelo, one of our committee members, came up with. And it was based on a cover letter that we had with the bylaws last year. And we thought this is a really good policy to start with. It just kind of talks about our values, that we want to be transparent, that everything is open to the public, and the only exceptions are privacy kinds of things. We want to be inclusive and encourage participation, that the NCAC should be a neutral and respectful forum for all voices and views pertinent to its objective. And we want to be fair and equitable, that all activities and actions of the committee should be conducted without undue influence and according to clearly defined and equitable processes. So we try to build the policies and procedures around all of these values, and of course, have respect for everybody involved with the NCAC. So Tom went through and took some of the different policies and procedures and attached them to each of these values. I'm not going to take the time now to go through that, but it kind of gives you an idea of how we really tried to implement all of the different standards into policy 1. So if anyone has any questions along the way, please stop me, and we'll be happy to discuss anything. But this is just kind of a overview here. At our first policy,
I guess I
Uh-huh.
have a question, just a
Yeah.
real quick question, and maybe it's for Gary, but or everybody, but are we gonna be able to do a registration of members? I know we talked about that and I see it there. I think we talked about doing it in July or something, the start
at
of a
the
new
June
year,
meeting, possibly.
or the June meeting, whichever one, but the end of the year or the beginning of a new year, whichever we do, but maybe the June meeting, I guess, but you could do it in August too. But are we going to be able to do that, Gary? Do you think?
Yeah,
I know you won't be. Okay.
I had a chance to talk
Okay.
to Jim about how he did it last
Okay.
year. And so
Okay.
yeah, it was a little, Zoom wasn't real clear on that, but yeah, I think it's
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Yeah, and Gary and I had a really good meeting yesterday too, where we went through a whole bunch of the secretary and communications related, task force related things. So yeah,
Okay.
we have some good updates. So access to NCAC records, the actual policy is that all records or documents of the NCAC and its subcommittees shall be accessible. When we go into the detail, it goes more into why and how. And this is something that Gary and I went through also, and there are related procedures that go with this policy that we will get to later. I'm not going to jump around between the related policies and the procedures, but Gary had some great ideas of how we handle some of this records retention. So we're gonna update that. I added you, Gary, to our document. This section of records retention on the, where we do it, how we do it. But basically, the state of Oregon requires that we retain our records permanently in perpetuity. And it's really the responsibility of Tillamook County. So Sarah is working on this as a project. She's put in a $200,000 budget line item request to be able to fix the records in the county. And she's using us actually as one of the justifications, but it goes through everything, permitting, all sorts of land use things. So eventually, hopefully, they can actually take over a lot of this retention. But for now, it's us. And she's been very complimentary about how the NCAC is maintaining those records. One of the things, though, in this last line is whenever feasible, NCAC emails shall be used by the executive board members for easier record keeping. And so, Gary, do you want to talk about looking into setting up the Google or Gmail accounts for our committee members?
Yeah, I need to investigate how to set them up so that they're linked together. I mean, currently anybody can just go in and create a Gmail account. That's what Google wants you to do. But that wouldn't help us if they're all just independent of each other. We need to find some way to get those to link, and I just don't know the technicalities of doing that. But once we do that, we can achieve this. The way we do it right now is just when you're sending out an email to the other board members, just always make sure that the info@ncac.org is copied, and then that's how we're getting our record keeping currently.
Okay. Does it matter if it's info or admin, Gary?
I think it goes to the same inbox right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Admin would be better, but I think the infos, that is a web link from the website. It still goes to the same general Google mailbox that we're using right
Okay.
now.
Okay, great. So we did this last year for the bylaws subcommittee emails. So when I send something out, it comes from bylaws at I can't even tell you what it is offhand, but at Gmail. And then but Gary's in control of that. So I can get in and receive emails directly, but they also go to a box that Gary controls. So when it changes from me to somebody else, then it should be smooth in getting that changed over. And we're going to try to do that. Sarah was very positive about doing that for everybody. And that way, if there's ever a records request for emails, we don't have to show our personal emails to the requester or to the county. That's what the main benefit is that we don't have to reveal our personal emails. That really is nobody else's business. So, any other questions about that? Okay, we spent quite a bit of time as a subcommittee on conflicts of interest, and Wyatt in particular, who's an attorney, has gone into this. We also looked at the state of Oregon on conflicts of interest. And, we all blithely say at the beginning of a meeting, yeah, no conflicts, no conflicts. It's a very complicated subject on what constitutes a conflict. And of course, Mark's very aware, being a school board member, what constitutes conflicts. But we have more information on this both in the procedures section of this, and then we have a bunch in the references, including some really good documents on how, if you think you might have a conflict, how you would go about figuring that out. There's kind of step-by-step things, because we're volunteers, but we're also considered public employees as far as the conflict of interest statement is concerned, being a part of the county. So, but it doesn't mean that just if we do have a conflict that we don't participate, we still can participate. So it's a little more subtle. And one of the things we're suggesting is that we have training once a year at the beginning of the year that comes in and goes through some of these things, but also goes through a conflict of interest training a little bit. We also put in the references where you would go if you have a question about whether you have a conflict, if after you go through it. So we think that's going to be helpful. So
I think, Nancy, if I could just I haven't viewed it, but I think the Oregon Ethics Commission, who covers this issue, they may have I think they might have just a little video, that you can watch to be.
they do.
And that's probably a great way to do it. Just I know in
Yeah.
education, that's how they do it at the start of a school year. They assign teachers to watch a certain number of videos regarding all kinds of things. So
yeah, no, in fact, I think you pointed us to the Oregon Ethics Commission initially,
Yeah.
Mark, and
Yeah.
they are a great resource. So
Yeah.
actually the stuff that we have in our references, we've taken from them. And so we did a little bit of editing out from the other kind of entities that might use that to simplify it a little bit for us. But yeah, they're terrific. So that's where a lot of our pointers are in the references section, along with a nice little one-page deal that goes through. So we'll go back to that later in the document to kind of show you what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I would just say, in my experience, they're looking at any connection between your position and any sort of monetary stuff, whether you have a family member that might benefit from financially, or it's generally they're trying to track generally money things. So
Right. So it is very helpful, because when I started saying no conflicts, I'm like, well, I don't know,
Yeah.
so we look into it. But and in fact, we have that right here, Mark. More information regarding conflicts of interest can be found through the Oregon Ethics Commission.
Right.
And then questions about whether a conflict exists may be directed to either the NCAC chairperson or the parliamentarian, or directly to Sarah. So she wanted that thrown in, that in case that she's there if you have any conflicts. I know Mark has an avenue to go directly to the Oregon Ethics Commission, and that's another alternative, but Sarah preferred it to go through her first.
You know, the
So-
one about money is certainly true and probably constitutes most of conflicts of interest. There are others, though. For example,
Mhm.
legal issues. If somebody happens to be in a legal situation where a decision is made that benefits them or hurts them, then that becomes a conflict of interest as well. So there are other kindred issues that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Surveys and straw polls. This is something that we're not going to go spend a lot of time on, but Michael and I worked on this, and there are kind of two different areas here. There's surveys, and then there are that are more formal for gathering opinions that are outside of an NCAC meeting. An example of a survey would be something like the community plan. I think intends to do a survey at some point that would be a lot more robust. And then straw polls more for gathering opinions in an NCAC meeting. So we're not going to go through all of that here, but it does give some operational principles for how you would do a straw poll. Neither of these are binding in any kind of decision. Both are to be used as input for making decisions later. So, but we spent quite a bit of time talking about how you would do a formal survey. And so, Ren, hopefully that'll be a resource for you when you guys get to this. We have it in the policy. We also have a longer procedure on it, but there is the Oregon State University Survey Research Center that can be a resource, along with there can be other places to be resources to have guidance on. It's a very complex area on how you write the questions, what you're trying to ascertain, how you what kind of survey methodology you use. Is it in person? Is it email? Is it, how do you do it? And how do you write the questions so that you can properly interpret them and get the data that you need? And then there are straw polls like we use in our feedback sessions, or we use them in a meeting to just gather information. So like in our last membership meeting, we had a straw poll just to get information on how much interest is there in these policies and procedures, and how much, how many feedback sessions do people want? Based on that, we as a subcommittee decided we would cancel a bunch of the feedback sessions that we had scheduled. So that was very helpful to us. We will never use survey results or straw polls as a substitute for motions. So we'll have another, polling is something Google or Zoom uses as a term. We also do our voting through polls, but this is different. This is more information only polls. So we'll have a separate section in here for voting and how you do polls for voting. Michael, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Not to this particular point. I think the thing that we need to ferret out is how the mechanics of doing these things, the mechanics of doing straw polls and surveys, and that's all.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll cover more when we get to the procedures section. So we've spent a lot of time on policy 5, community engagement, and Mark has been very involved in all this because we receive a lot of requests, or not a lot, we receive requests from outside organizations to communicate information to us or partner with us on activities or promote the work of the outside organization. And so we have developed policies on how we handle those requests. So we have this in procedures separately. We also have detail in the policy itself. So the policy looks at like what do we look like? What are we looking for in determining something? When we get to the procedure, we'll give more detailed information on how we actually process that. I think I'd also just like to hear your input at the end on whether you like this structure where we have a series of policies and then a series of procedures, or whether it's more confusing to have them all broken out like this. But basically, when we get a request, we're saying that they should all be submitted to the executive board by emailing info@nescoandcac.org. And then there'll be a procedure on how we process. But the types of requesters can be government agencies, they can be community groups, they can be political campaigns for either candidates or for ballot measures, like we're currently going to be talking about on Tuesday. They can be individuals who may be NSCAC members, or they could be other interested parties, or they could be businesses. And then we need to look at see whether their request falls within the mission of the NCAC and of Tillamook County. Sarah wanted that added, and is brought forward in time to be with NCAC notice requirements. So we kind of went through this policy. This, the request to have the ballot measure presented came timely. Rand brought a couple of requests in last November that were timely, that helped kind of ferret out these policies. And so I think they, because we didn't have any really at the time. So I think we kind of tried to use some of those. And there were a couple of others. There's a ballot measure in November where the county asked us to have a speaker come in. So this is an area where we may get some pushback from the county on this, but request for political advocacy is a special case. And so if it involves a candidate, we can decide as an executive board on whether to hold a candidate forum. And we need to write actually procedures around holding a candidate forum so that all candidates are invited. We don't ever make an endorsement ever, and how it is run. But so far we haven't had that come up. If it's a ballot measure, then the executive board decides whether to accept the request. We're saying if it does, then representatives of all known sides should be invited to speak. They don't have to accept. We can still go forward with just one representative, which it sounds like we may be doing on Tuesday. A maximum of one speaker per position may be presented. Questions from the membership are permitted, and the NCAC may not take a position on a ballot measure. I went through this with Sarah one-on-one several weeks ago before any of this came up. And she agreed that this was the right way to go. And then she came to one of our meetings. We went through it again. She agreed this is the way to go. So, but now that we kind of pushed back on having a commissioner come to speak at one of our membership meetings where we didn't have enough time to make a decision before the meeting, and we pushed back. I don't know, they may want to come back and change this, and you will accept having somebody come in from the county if it's a county ballot measure. We'll find out. But we certainly accommodated, and I think they may end up getting more people attending because it's not just taking part of a meeting where the particular area wasn't noticed. So we will never promote or partner on fundraising activities or requests or share the contact list. So any comments on this?
Well, I think it kind of clarifies that the NCA has its function in the community and has its two big community meetings. And those are the places where those things could potentially happen as an alternative to the NCAC. And I've encouraged them to go about something to build their mailing list to a greater degree.
Yeah.
So that they don't look to the NCAC because it's got the mailing list. And now that the policy is clarified, it's not going to be available for things that they were interested in. And so I think it's great to have it clarified, and it'll just stimulate the NCA to do more to build its own stuff.
Well, and this is still a draft, Rand, so that's why we're coming to you guys. If you want to discuss changing it, the fundraising activities we got from Sarah, you will not fundraise. Period. I mean, she was just adamant.
Yeah.
You are not going to do that. But
Right.
But
I think that
kinda,
it does help clarify the difference between the two. And the community thinks of them as two different things too. they're finally distinguishing one from the other.
Yeah.
There was confusion for a couple of years, but I think they function for different purposes in land use, and some of the things that the NCAC does, I think just are just best left alone as far as trying to get a better communication device. They need to get their own stuff together, and then the things can be side by side for their different functions, and not say, we want your stuff, you know, to do this. And so I think it's been very helpful.
Okay. It sounds like you've had a really good support with some of the fundraising things for these really excellent projects, like the road project and that kind of thing. And it sounds like you've gotten terrific response. You're muted. You're muted, Rand. Rand, you're muted.
That's okay. I was just saying that the mailman project,
Yeah.
mailman and the road project did very well, and they didn't
Yeah.
need it. It was more word of mouth than any, and a smaller outreach, but it worked just fine.
Yeah.
Now,
that's
I've
great.
got a question, just on the fundraising side. You know, the NCA only has 2 meetings a year, and say there was something that came up the NCA had a project it was supporting, say it was roads or whatever, and the NCAC or us, the executive board, felt that it was appropriate to bring to our membership to support, since it was, say, apolitical or, you know, just a PSA, and it was a fundraising project for the NCA, that would be allowed, since it wouldn't be fundraising for us. Is that correct?
Well, this word promote kind of falls in there, and I'm going to throw that to Mark. So,
Yeah, Alex, I think that, I guess I would say, you know, Alex, that I think that the organization NCAC, I don't know now, but I think there's a possibility that many different kinds of fundraising organizations within Nesquin might want to advertise, if you would, on our site, whether it's attaching it to the NCAC site or PSA at a community meeting. And for us, Alex, it gets into kind of a tough area. When we say yes, we are seen as endorsing, and when we say no, we are seen as not endorsing. And so it can be a little bit of a slippery slope in that regard. Because when we do give them access to, you know, the bulletin board or a meeting or the website, that's an endorsement. So I would say, and Sarah's, you know, I just think that, yeah, I would say we have to be very, very cautious about that. And generally my response would be no.
I mean, my technical reading on that last line
Yeah.
said, no,
Yeah.
we can't. We've said in our policy, we don't do that. Even if it's
Yeah.
for a good cause, we've said we're not the right outlet for that. We're not saying it's bad or
Yeah.
good. We're just saying we can't do that. It's not
Yeah.
the right place for it.
Well, fortunately, our community has the NCA.
Yeah.
Yeah, my sense is they're coming to us because there's a sense of weakness in the NCA. They're not, I mean, two times a year is not enough to meet. I think if we had a more robust, active NCA, we wouldn't even be seeing a lot of this kind of stuff happening.
well, and some of these things, like, you know, the road project was great, but it's involving people with the county, and they weren't willing to come in and say anything in writing that they're going to produce some of this money, and it just became kind of uncomfortable because we're also a county body. And but the great thing is that, you know, when they used other means, there's a Facebook page, I guess, that could be used, and there was some other page, golf club list. Is that right, Ren? Anyway, I mean, people just really responded, which was terrific. So
Yeah, they
the
did.
nice thing is that it seems like these couple of things, like the mailman, and that there are ways to get the needed funding without us. Which, you know, if that had not been true, I think this would be much harder, you know, to say no on. But there seems to be these other resources. Any other comments? Okay. So policy 6, statements and official positions. But basically all formal statements and official positions of the NCAC shall be approved by the NCAC membership. Formal studies and reports should be archived and available for public access. And I think we just saw that with our urgent meeting where the membership approved sending even though it was a draft and kind of an early draft of the middle housing, went out with the approval of the membership. Any comments? Okay, honor system. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and Rand, let me just make a comment here about that of the shall be approved statements and official positions. So I sent the document on to Sarah. I think I CC'd you on it.
Yes, you did.
And Tom had talked to me about, Mark, maybe you should send this. And so as the chair, and so I don't know, Nancy, if you want to put something in there that, about the chair sending those documents on for the membership, or if we want to get that technical about it, but, at least Tom felt that the chair should send it on to Sarah, and I did, and it got to her, and I confirmed it got to her, Randall, so she has it, and it met their timeline and things.
The best way to boost your meta.
But I don't know where that came from,
I don't either.
but I agree. I think it should always come from the chair.
Well,
And that
well,
means you
that's-
guarantee that the chair read it and understood
Well,
it and was participating in it.
Yeah, and Sarah, we
Subcommittee.
talk all the time anyways, and so,
Yeah.
it makes sense kind of, and it's a little tiny thing, but it might be worth putting in there, but
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, sounds like a good comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this? Okay. Oops. Get out of the boxes to be able to move the thing. So there. Okay, so we spent quite a bit of time on honor system for voting. We remember Article 3 of the bylaws membership was the biggie when we did the bylaws last year, as most of you probably recall. And so then it came up about how are we going to vet members for voting, particularly if it's a controversial kind of a topic, and decided during the bylaws thing, no, it's just not feasible for us to, particularly on the fly, but really we're not in the position of policing members voting. And Wyatt, who is a former federal prosecutor in Colorado, or the western region of Colorado, said that it's really quite a principle within law that most people will follow an honor system, and that as long as you are asked to state, if you don't meet a requirement, it's very, very rare for anybody to go in and pretend to vote when they're really not eligible. So this policy just says that the chairperson of the NCAC or chairperson of a subcommittee shall state the membership qualifications before any formal vote or series of votes. It gives the attendees the ability to judge their own qualifications and make an informed decision based on the announced qualifications. So there's also an accompanying procedure on this, which we will get to, but there's a statement that Mark has started adding to the agendas of the meetings to read before a vote, and that Alex did at our last meeting. So any questions on this? Membership registration and privacy. The NCAC shall require members to register when joining and annually thereafter with qualifying information. So Gary and I talked about this yesterday on how we can do it. And Gary had and he just mentioned he had talked with Jeff about how to set that up. Do you want to talk about that some, Gary?
So the way it was done last time was through a Zoom registration for people when they want to register. We require people to register to get the meeting link to get into a Zoom meeting that we have scheduled. And one of the things that Zoom allows you to do, it's a little more complicated than it needed to be, but there's a way to edit the meeting once you've set it up to require participants before they can get a successful register, they have to fill out a form, a survey, basically, and you can ask the questions in that. And that, I think from my understanding, all that will do is it will collect the information and then go ahead and give them registration. There's no way to put any validation code in there that says, oh, they didn't answer this question properly, so we won't allow the registration to go forward. So they could still register for the meeting and get into it, but we would have a record for that meeting that their answer on this question was not in an affirmative, and so technically they weren't qualified for voting. That's the only way we can do it right now within the limitations that we have. That is different from, say, on the website where we have a subscription button. All the subscription button does is adds their email address to our mailing list so that we can send them information. And anybody from anywhere who doesn't have any property in this, doesn't live here, could still register or could still subscribe to our emails if they want to get them for whatever reason. So there are some limitations in what we can do in terms of putting up any kind of gateways about, someone who's not really qualified or not eligible for being in there. So this idea of member registration is kind of loose. There may be some people who are registered that are not, I don't know that we would actually consider them members. We have a spreadsheet maintained on our Google Drive that has input it automatically gets input from that Squarespace subscription. So when you subscribe and put your email in that, it gets added into that Google Excel spreadsheet. There's also some names that have been manually added because of people who either had problems trying to subscribe or they just went directly to the secretary and said, hey, I just moved out here, I'm interested, can you add me to your mailing list? And somebody went in and did that. Probably about 90% of the people who are on the official, the mailing list, let's say, is through the subscription link. And so right now we're using that mailing list as the membership registration. I think we're meaning two different things, but right now we only have the capability of maintaining the email list, and we're using it as a registration. If that's an issue going forward, we need to figure out some way to make it more formalized. And I don't know that I have an answer for that.
Yeah, so Gary and I started talking about it yesterday, but if we did the once a year Zoom registration ahead of time, the problem is I think people have started, I do it, I think a lot of people do it, and I've noticed when I've gone in to a Zoom meeting that people don't pre-register, they tend to just go in and the Zoom remembers them, and if they suddenly get hit with this long question of what's your Nesquin address, what's your home address, if it's different, and all this other stuff, and they're wanting to get into a meeting, it may be an issue. But we could send out a note ahead of time saying, please click here to do the annual registration through the email address list or something. I don't think it has to be, it's another thing where we don't want to be the police, but if there's a button to register for the newsletter, it can have these kinds of questions that go to a spreadsheet. The intent of this is more so we know who our members are. It could have people in there that don't qualify for membership. We just have a notice. And Gary, I think when we set this up, if we under member qualification, we could just say, I'm not a member, but I want to be part of it, or something, so we could let people enter that aren't official members. But this was really helpful. Jeff's predecessor, was that Bill Schlichting? Anyway, set this up in June of 2023, and we were able to use that information when we were developing Article 3, the membership area. It was really helpful to see where our members are, and so that we didn't have people excluded. I think there'd been some concern about Slab Creek Road being excluded, which we never intended. But it showed we had members there. So, so, that proved to be really helpful, and it could be helpful for other things, just to make sure that we're up to date. It's not meant for a policing thing at all. One thing that we got concurrence from the county council about last year with the bylaws is that we can keep this contact information confidential. We would have to produce names and how they qualify as members if requested, but any of the other contact information we do not need to make public. So even though other things are. Any questions on this? Okay, Michael. Policy 9, parliamentarian.
Yes. Okay. I was thinking about this at some time ago and proposed this to the group, and they thought it was a great idea. And what it really says is basically at the beginning of each term of committees and subcommittees and task forces and so on, that there be a standardized process to bring them on board and to get them off and running, so that they are equipped to handle their business, and they have the appropriate structure and so on to do it. And so the purpose for doing such things is to standardize that process for each group, so that when they function the same as all other groups.
And we'll cover that under our later procedure too.
Oh,
Michael.
okay. All right. Then what are you asking?
This is more just about you, your job.
My job. Well, basically and very simply, my job is to act as a fair witness and to interpret rules and regulations, particularly with respect to Robert's rules and also with bylaws and other standing rules and so on. Personally, and this is a personal perspective, the parliamentarian is not the law. The parliamentarian is a facilitator and is available to help things along whenever that need occurs, and that is for anybody in the organization. I've always felt that a good parliamentarian's voice is rarely, if ever, heard unless something occurs that requires it. It's not the parliamentarian's job to be in the middle of the thicket, but to facilitate things as they move along. I've always felt very strongly about that. And if the business of the organization is moving forward, then stay out of the way. And offer an amount of flexibility to get that stuff done, and to anticipate if problems are right around the corner, to be aware of that, and maybe to point that out at an appropriate time. Otherwise, that's really all there is to it. It's a secondary position and not primary at all, just a facilitator of the business of the organization. And also, by the way, and this is a second most important thing, is to protect the integrity and the positions of the minority group in the organization.
Yeah, that's great. And we're very fortunate to have Michael, who is currently a parliamentarian for the OSU Faculty Senate, as well as has been a parliamentarian for a union, was the AFL-CIO.
Oh yeah, it was AFL-CIO. That was really interesting. Let me tell you, that was a talk about herding cats.
Yeah. So thank you, Michael. So policy 10, grant applications and fundraising. We've learned something through this process that we didn't realize. And Sarah has been quite direct that we should not be doing grant applications typically. But application for an acceptance of grants shall be approved by the membership. If approved, we shall forward the recommendation to the county for approval and processing. And then all such financial transactions shall be administered by Sarah's group. So, but basically, we have to have a really good reason for a grant. So it's kind of what she said to us. We had not been aware of that. So at the same time, originally we had the direction that we just shouldn't be having money, that they will they will be able to send money back to us. But in our last meeting where we said, do we need to take the donate button off? She did say we can go ahead and leave it on until they're equipped to handle it. They don't want to keep us from just being able to do our business, but that's all we should be raising money for, is to be able to handle our Zoom accounts and our, different things like that. So for now, we can leave the donate button on the website, and she's hoping to have budget approval this year. She submitted it to be able to fully fund all the CACs, but that's still quite iffy. And Chris, I don't think you've ever seen a reimbursement, right? And she said just to have Chris reimburse, send her directly the reimbursement requests, and she should be able to process it. But
No, we've done
We've-
that.
we've-
We've done that
yeah,
in the
we've done
past,
that.
and it's
Yeah.
been crickets.
yeah. So for now, as long as we're not fundraising for some massive thing that isn't part of our real true mission. Apparently that happened in the past, and they don't want that. Okay.
So I would just interject. I think we'll see how their budget goes, but
Mhm.
being in a school district and budgeting and with the state funds for
Right.
schools and everything else, it will take a while.
Yeah.
And I would anticipate that we may have to advertise for donations again
Mhm.
at some point before we get money from them. So that I'll just say that, and we'll approve that. Maybe we go through a process approving that in an executive meeting where funds
Yeah.
are low and we need money just to keep running the emails, and we'll do a donation, and I'll CC Sarah on that and let her know that that's what we're doing, and it's because we haven't been reimbursed. So
Right. I think that's good. And
Yeah.
actually, it came up when we had our membership meeting in February. There was a new member who heard that we were needing some money, and I think through your report, Chris, that there'd been some donations, and she was all set to go put up posters and ask for donations to the NCAC, and that's kind of when this kind of came up. And
Yeah.
but there are a lot of people out there who are willing to help us, so we can
Yeah.
keep that in mind if we need it. So.
Great.
Oh, thank you. The Outreach Task Force, this is new through the bylaws. Last year, the Outreach Task Force kind of incorporated parts of the nominating committee, and except they don't do vetting, they just make sure they're a member, but they're supposed to go out and try to find officers and subcommittee members, kind of advertise it. That's one of their functions. The other function is to just let people know what the NCAC is and try to gather interest and have more people join the NCAC. And so Susan is currently is the chair, and she's been working on setting up this policy and related procedures, and trying to find task force members that represent each of these different neighborhoods, feeling like they would be best served. They're going to know their neighbors. They would be able to do some promotion. They're also taking over the responsibility of posting information about the NCAC. It used to be that poor Jeff had to go out and post individual things on telephone poles about meetings coming up and that kind of thing. And we've gotten rid of that out of the bylaws. But Susan and Mark actually together have gone out and gotten approval, and Alex, you helped with this, at various
Mhm.
locations to like the store, and to be able to post something like an annual poster just saying, this is the NCAC, it's what we do, here's how you contact us, and our meetings are typically this, and here's our website. And just have that at, I think, the golf club, and they're looking at it 3 or 4 different spots to be able to post these things. But also just go out and try to get more information about everything. So these are the different neighborhoods that have been identified. We've learned how to spell Sahali. So any questions about the Outreach Task Force? There's also procedures, and there's a ton of information. No, that's monitoring. There's procedures also about the Outreach Task Force. So the Monitoring Task Force is something that had been suggested by Guy Sievert, and who is personally doing a ton of this monitoring business and would like to get out of it. So we created in the bylaws a monitoring task force. A task force, by the way, is different than a subcommittee. A task force is something that the executive board can set up and approve members. They don't have to follow Oregon public meeting law. They don't make significant decisions affecting anything. They can just, as a group, to get work done. So they have more flexibility than a subcommittee does. So the monitoring task force, we're trying to find a chair and people to be able to take on some of these different monitoring things. And when we get further down, there's an extensive list that Susan has compiled with Guy in the references section of all the different areas that need to be monitored. And, it could be something where you spend a few minutes a month going in and just checking up on things and then coming back to the board saying, through the chair, saying, maybe this person could come in and give an update at a meeting, or we can put something out about, people should know about this or that. And that might generate more interest as well if we have speakers at meetings talking about some relevant issue, public safety, water board, as Gary was talking about yesterday.
Hey,
So,
Nancy, doesn't the last piece of
uh-huh.
this fall under the secretary's responsibilities? Maintaining the contact list.
Well,
Which contact list is it?
which contact list? Yeah, this is a separate contact list.
Okay, this isn't NCAC members.
No, this is let me just go to it. Let me
Okay.
I'm just gonna go to the document. You can see the document now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just go down. Oh, that's the bylaws. Never mind. I only have 4 things open. You would think I would be able to get the right document. Okay. There's the conflict of interest stuff. Map. Okay, all this
Oh,
is
okay.
the contact list for the monitoring task force. Susan and Guy spent a lot of time on this, and so it's all and I'm sure there are others, but recommending that this be updated at least yearly. But anytime we hear of a difference, it's got all of this. So we would
Yeah.
just need one person, a person per maybe 2 of these different things to maybe attend their meetings or just talk with their chairs about what might be happening and report back. But Guy is doing all these now, or he's on the different committees. So that's the contact list that they will be
Okay,
doing.
that makes sense.
Good question. Thank you very much. Okay. Policy 13 is updates to the reference section. I just showed you the reference section. It's basically pretty routine stuff. And so like that monitoring list, we don't need to go to the membership basically to update the monitoring contact list, for example. But we would have to go to the membership to change the map area, job descriptions, that kind of thing would be done with, but the rest of it could just be done with the approval of the executive board. So let me just go back to that. The references section is basically kind of routine things. Contact information for executive board members will be going in here. We don't. And by contact information, we want to basically have the names and the email addresses that are these Gmail email addresses that we have set up. We don't want your phone numbers to have to be public or anything like that. Just we want to name who the different members of the board are and have their email addresses that are set up, will be set up with the Gmail account. The contact information for the monitoring task force, the map, area map. We didn't put it in the bylaws because it might change. It was agreed upon, though. It's referred to in the bylaws. And then this has just been kind of really interesting. It's come out through the community plan work that we brought in here and Tom says the map needs to be revised, but it shows the neighborhoods, which I have been really fun to kind of see. And they use that for the outreach task force too. And then job descriptions, which you're seeing a lot of Nancy needs to do items. So we're going to go through the communications and the secretary one I have in the file that Gary and I have agreed on for today that we'll talk about the duty of the secretary. And then in parliamentarian duties, which is done because Michael got his work done, is in there. And then current ad hoc committees, subcommittees, and task forces. The ad hoc ones are temporary. So like the communications plan steering committee is in here because it will go away once the community plan is done. And then conflict of interest resources, we have links to the League of Oregon Cities, the Oregon Ethics Commission, and the Oregon Ethics Commission, a guide for public officials, which is a really good document that lays out clearly what we do. And this is in that area that shows what can equal a conflict of interest. And so this is a really helpful chart.
Pretty great stuff.
And yeah, and what you have to disclose versus whether you can even participate. So this is kind of a really helpful thing. But this link here in particular, and these are live links, goes to a really helpful document that we decided not to actually put in our document or a link to it. So we'll also need to check all the links. But that's basically the reference section that we're referring to here, that we're giving a little more flexibility and updates. Does that sound okay? Okay. Policy 14, use of name or title. And this is why it's idea that we just, people can't just go off willy-nilly and say that they're official, that they're representing the NCAC on something outside the NCAC without authorization. Minutes, basically it's saying that written minutes are required, even though we have video, they're required for all types of meetings except task force meetings. And then we describe what needs to be in them in the procedures. They can be pretty brief. They don't have to be extensive, but at least somebody should be able to go to the minutes and see whether they want to watch the video. Urgent meetings, we're giving more information that they can be on how they can be called. This was quite a discussion item in the bylaws development is why would we ever need an urgent meeting? Well, we've had 2 or 3 this year that have come up. So we're giving a little more information about how they should be called. And that we would call an urgent executive board meeting if we need to be able to call an urgent membership meeting. If we don't have time for that, then the chairperson is authorized to call a membership meeting on his or her own. Or that there's an important issue that arises between a regular executive board meeting and a regular special membership meeting, then we could call an urgent meeting. So we did this, right, just recently. And then urgent membership meetings are called to address important issues that are timely for an NCAC recommendation to Tillamook County or another agency. So we had that for the community plan middle housing thing where we just didn't have the 14-day requirement for a membership meeting. Information only meetings, we're basically saying a quorum's not required if it's information only. So feedback sessions are an example of an information only meeting. And we define what those are. So that's it for policies. Before we get into procedures, does anyone have any concerns, questions, comments? Okay, so you'll see the difference now with procedures. The honor system procedures to ensure that the NCAC is operating in a fair and open manner. And it's assumed that people will not misrepresent themselves. Then we have detail. So on how we do that, this is the area here that it contains the statement that is read or is in the in the agenda before a meeting. That voting on this motion will be on the honor system. Only persons who qualify as members of the NCAC are eligible to vote. Members are defined as blah, 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 blah. And then they can, if they don't know, they can put something in the chat. And then it gives more detail about what's in the bylaws about membership requirements. And the honor system depends on mutual respect, limiting time for comment on meetings, calling out inappropriate comments, and if necessary, after warning, cutting off audio feed due to abusive contact is at the discretion of the chair of the NCAC meeting person. Bill Miller, our member last year was very insistent that we follow Robert's rules, and positions are, well, no, that's the gist of the meeting, not the chairperson. He's a chair of a meeting is different than the chairperson, so we adopted that. Procedure 2, Oregon Public Meeting Law. All meetings of the NCAC should be recorded and made available in the archive section of the NCAC website for streaming. And the recordings of the meetings shall be available to the membership unedited, except for segments that contain confidential information. Like when I shared my email screen the other day, I was able to go in and edit that out. Meeting minutes requirements, description of how and when the meetings minutes are constructed. So it just says what should be included, and they can be pretty simple. We don't need to go through that here, but it's basically how the approval process happens, and that kind of thing in the time. And so quite a bit on minutes and what you do with them. They're also in Robert's rules, but we just felt like it should be specified. I wasn't planning to go through this in detail unless anybody wants to. Notices, meeting notices as specified in the bylaws shall include the meeting date and time, the agenda, the electronic meeting link, and if a hybrid meeting, the physical location. The agenda can be changed. You need to put an agenda, but it can be changed really even up to and including a meeting. Notice of openings for nominations, submission of applications, and existing vacancies shall be posted on the NCAC website as soon as they are feasible, after they are known or received. And I don't know that we do that actually right now.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think it's dedicated on the site yet for that. We have to, I don't know, create a web page somewhere and shoehorn it into the navigation. Yeah. So like, for instance, we don't really have that for the notices from the county. So what we've been doing is just on the homepage, it's kind of way down at the bottom. There's just a section where you can put it in. If you scroll down there, you'll miss it. So,
yeah.
I mean, we could, something as important as this, maybe it would be nice to have it on the homepage. So it's the first thing that's there. It's staring you in the face. But, once again, there's a lot of other stuff that's on that homepage, and
Yeah, maybe next year we could meet with a website or web one of your web people, volunteers, and see if we can get some of this stuff redesigned. Probably not at the end of this year. Voting procedures for taking votes in an NCAC meeting, and this is to come. And also procedures for taking votes if a roll call vote is requested. So this was a big issue in the bylaws last year, is getting this through the county was not requiring keeping records of who voted how. A lot of our members, excuse me, vehemently wanted to be able to vote privately. And that's what we finally got through. The county concurred with that, unless there's a request for a roll call vote, which is part of Robert's rules. And in that case, if that's approved, then we would be taking names and recording names. So the decision from the county is, Zoom will record the names, and we actually discard them, or our policy would be to discard them unless a roll call vote, and just show the aggregate totals. if we have them in our records, then we are to produce them if requested. Chances are we wouldn't be requested, but you never know. We've had some controversial things come up, so we're still writing the details on that. And then this, we already talked about the NCAC executive board member email. We'll be working with Gary on that. Changes to the bylaws basically gives us further directions. Some of this is in the bylaws themselves, but it gives the bylaws subcommittee direction on how to requested changes to the bylaws. And we're kind of, I think people are getting sleepy, but does anyone care to go through the detail on this? Okay. Reports to outside agencies. So you're seeing that we had some of this in the policy area. So now this goes into how we make these reports and gives more of the detail. The results of any vote making a recommendation on behalf of the NCAC should be forwarded to the Tillamook County Development Director as appropriate. And I think here we need to add in again, it'll come from the chairperson, and showing what the time and location of the vote, who was in attendance, clear statement of the recommendation, the number of members voting aye, nay, or abstaining. So this is something that we had a lot of discussion last year also with the bylaws, that the county commissioners said that they really want to know the numbers of voting, and in the case of the minority, they might actually take the minority votes quite a bit more seriously if it's a close vote than it's one or two people. So, but they will always listen to the minority, and the minority can always communicate separately. But we do provide some more information here on how minority reports can be submitted along with the majority reports. That we would be writing the majority report, and then there's opportunity for the separate minority reports as long as they're timely. So, and they would be sent to the office along with that. So any questions about procedure? Well, this is outside. So we also have to go through, sorry, that's reports to the county. For outside agencies, we also have to consult with the county before we send it. And so we have kind of a flow chart here that if the county supports our recommendation, then we'll be able to submit it directly to the appropriate agency. And interestingly, the NCAC and its officers and members are covered by county liability insurance if this is the case. If the county chooses not to respond, or responds that they have no opinion, then we shall reaffirm our recommendation through a vote of the membership. And if that's positive, then we need to check on a legal opinion about the potential liability for the NCAC. In most cases, there probably isn't a problem, but the officer and its members may not be covered by county insurance. This would be for really controversial kinds of things. And if Tillamook County discourages the submitting of the recommendation, the matter is quashed and the report will not be submitted. So we are an arm of the county, and so this clarifies that we would not do something that would undermine the county. Any questions about that?
This makes sense to me.
Removal and suspension from position. It gives us procedures on removing people or suspending them. We spent quite a bit of time on this, and this will require a bylaws change. There are a number of bylaws changes that will be done on May 31st that are pretty minor, but in the bylaws, we just weren't thinking, and we said that the executive board had the ability to remove members of subcommittees and task forces if necessary, but subcommittee members are voted on or elected by the membership. So this is clarifying, and it will clarify in the bylaws that the body that appointed or elected a person will be the one to remove that person. So if a subcommittee member needs to be removed, then that would have to go to the membership. So these set up procedures on how we go about doing that. And the first thing would be try to work with the person. First, is there a way that we can correct the problem, or that they might want to just resign if there's an issue? But basically elected positions would go to the board, to the membership. But there are two options for submitting that removal. One would be that the executive board may adopt a motion to recommend approval of the elected member during a properly noticed executive board meeting. The removal motion would be presented to the members at a subsequent meeting. Or a member could be making a motion at a regular membership meeting that would then go to the executive board. There would not be a vote taken at that meeting. It would be scheduled for the next regular or special membership meeting. And we're encouraging people to contact the NCAC chairperson first. We think this is really rare. Hopefully it will never happen. But if you don't have procedures, then you can't remove people. With appointed positions, it's up to the executive board. And suspension, there might be an emergency where someone needs to be suspended. We don't anticipate that, but it would be something where they would cease doing operations while an investigation and the formal procedure is done. You can tell this was written by a lawyer, Wyatt. And then the procedures are to actually try to resolve the issue first, notice it, and make sure that the person has an opportunity to say why they should stay, defend themselves, whatever, and all of that. So a 2/3 majority is required to remove somebody. It should be hard. And removal will be effective immediately upon the passage of the motion. So any questions on that? It's not a really fun thing to think about, and we hope it will never have to be used, but we put quite a bit of thought into it. Any discussion? Okay, moving on to procedure 10, organization of subcommittees and task forces. And this is what you were talking about, Michael. So I'll give it over to you.
Okay. The idea is, again, to standardize the process used for each group so that there's a set of expectations to be met. To acquaint the members of formal conduct of meetings so that they can proceed formally. To introduce required and expected procedures to be used, and that relates, of course, to taking minutes, adhering to county rules and regulations and Oregon open meeting laws and that sort of thing. Statements of conflict of interest and, those sort of standard, and there's a short list of those things, but each group should have that available at the beginning. And to facilitate their business, to help them move along, to help clarify what they're there for and what they can and do and what they should be sensitive to as well. This particular procedure suggests that the parliamentarian or the executive board's appointee convene each subcommittee and task force at the beginning of their session. Introduce them to the bylaws and the PPRs in some respect, so that these bylaws are a marvelous document, but they are formidable. And I don't think we can expect that everybody's going to pore over them and read them and incorporate them in their own brain before they do this, but at least there are significant points that should be brought out for them to understand and help facilitate their business. Give them a little introduction to Robert's rules. And again, as I said earlier, Robert's rules are not there to make things difficult for people. They're there to help facilitate the business. And so there are simple things about Robert's rules that people can know about. The most of what happens in meetings, as you all are aware of, is simple discussion and so on. But once a motion pops up, then there are simple steps to be followed to assure that things happen in an orderly fashion. And that's when Robert's rules really kicks in a little bit. Next is to lead in the election of the chairperson for each group. Since there is not one, then the parliamentarian, and this is not unusual that someone from the outside does that. And of course, as soon as that person is elected, then the business of the organization moves forward. Identify a secretary or a scribe and let them understand what their responsibilities are in terms of taking notes and minutes and making them available and archiving them and so on. If desirable, to entertain a discussion on the formal conduct of meetings, and sometimes that's helpful. It's my experience that when we have organizations such as ours, a lot of people have either no idea what they're supposed to be doing or how to do it, or some people have a very clear idea, but it's what they've heard other people do, which is what they've heard other people do, and not necessarily accurate or facilitating of what their business is. And then finally, to be available, or offer at least to be available for any advice or assistance in the future, if each group requests it, because the parliamentarian serves the organization in its totality, and that's pretty much what that's about.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Any questions about this? I know we felt like when we got together, we didn't even know how to set up a meeting first year, and much less how to go forward. So we thought this could be helpful. Thank
Well,
you.
I also should add that these are not requirements, because a lot of our groups and subgroups and subcommittees are really quite able to handle their business, but at least to formally go through things so that everybody's on the same page. They get to know each other, and then their business is kicked off and off and running.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Procedure 11, monitoring task force. Prior to each NCAC membership meeting, the monitoring task force shall contact various entities for any updates. And so this is kind of going through, again, what's in the references section that is showing some of the areas that they should be checking on. We do have some questions. What does the CAC do with these reports other than present them to the membership? It seems like if there's a concern about something, the CAC could, as a result of the monitoring, invite an agency district to a meeting to answer questions and give a more detailed report. So if the monitoring report generates questions from the membership, who follows up? So these are some things that we may go back and answer next year, but something for you guys to think about too on what we do. And obviously, when we do get a monitoring task force set up, they can answer some of these questions, but along with the board. But, I do think by bringing in some of these areas, we would generate more attendance in our meetings because there'd be something of interest, particularly emergency management. What about our water? What about the bear situation as we're going into bear time? I think all of those kinds of things, even if you invite someone in for 5 or 10 minutes, could end up in being informative, but also generating interest at our meetings. So maybe think of something for our June meeting that we could put on the agenda. Like particularly, there's a lot going on from what I hear with the emergency task force stuff. Would be good. Anyway, just a thought. Any questions there? Okay, survey guide, procedure 12 is going away. It's in 18 and 19. As I say, work in progress. NCAC archives describes how backups are to be done and where they're to be stored. And this is a work in progress. And I just added Gary after talking to him yesterday. He's quite an expert in this area. So So Gary, we would like to invite you to join Wyatt and me to write up how we do this. Conflicts of interest, the full text, we're going more into the detail that we had in the conflicts of interest policy. I think that's policy 4 or 5, on how we handle what we do. So it describes a person describing shall describe, no wills, with specificity the nature of the conflict and whether they or not they intend to vote and or participate in the discussion on the question in which a conflict exists. If they decide to participate and or vote, they shall state the justification for this, and questions from the membership shall be permitted by the chair. Request to the NCAC, it's a formal procedure for handling. So we went through this in some detail in the policy. This gives more about how do we process the requests step by step. And I'm not going to go through it all unless you want me to. It's actually several pages. So, and this came mainly from me with 5 levels of bullets, which Tom does not like. So he's going to rewrite this to make it a little easier to understand. But it's kind of a flow chart kind of a thing on how do you make a decision tree on how you go about analyzing whether to respond. So,
And I would just say that in my short time, this is one of the areas that we've really seen quite a growth in terms of, organizations coming to the NCAC, making requests to the NCAC, and that's it's not a bad thing. It's just that it'll be nice to have some policy about, like Nancy said, a decision tree about which way we go on these, and the executive board has really been great about helping with these decisions. So I think this is really good.
thank you. And I think in there too, I think Mark had requested that we have a bylaws change to make this up to the executive board and not just the chair. So that's going to be in the proposal as well, unless anybody has a disagreement with that. So as you'll see, there are kind of 3 separate areas. There's partnership requests, request to partner with them on something, or request to promote something, like speaking at a meeting, sending out something on an email list, that kind of thing. And then kind of the detail there on, the email blast, etc. And are we going to create a bulletin board section of the NCAC website? That might be a future thing where other organizations could post. But as Mark says, it gets a little tricky because it does appear like we're endorsing. So we've kind of gone back and forth here. But let me just say, I know we're going through this pretty quickly. If as you have a chance to look at the documents yourself anytime, please let us know if you have any concerns at all, because this is a document that's really going to be for the board. Procedure 16, setting meeting times and mode. The bylaws state that the regular membership meetings will be the 2nd Saturday. It doesn't state the time. That's kind of for Robert's rules. And so this is stating that the meetings will start at 10 a.m. and be conducted by Zoom, but we can change it. And as long as we give at least the 14 days notice, and that per the bylaws, a hybrid meeting may be held with proper notice. Otherwise, they'll be with Zoom. All meetings have to be at least Zoom. And then it goes into when the executive board meetings are. We're saying the 4th Wednesday of each month, 3:30, unless otherwise scheduled by the executive board with proper notice. So that seems to be what we've been landing on. So that can also be changed.
Mm-hmm.
And then other meetings can be scheduled as needed with appropriate notice. Procedure 17, convening of subcommittees and task forces. It's kind of a description of how we start these up. So, well, shoot. Well, it sure seems like what you were going through earlier, Michael. We're going to have to look at procedure 17 versus procedure And organization of subcommittees and task forces. Looks like we have some duplicate stuff.
Yeah, it's a duplicate. Yeah,
Okay.
it's almost identical. So
Yeah. So we will fix that.
we'll blame it on Tom.
Yeah, it's got to be his fault. Surveys. So this goes into some detail about how to construct a formal survey. And we're hoping it will be a resource on how to do it. Tom is going to rewrite it because it has too many levels of bullets. But Michael and I spent a fair amount of time on this, and so it goes into some detail that I won't go through here, but it's hopefully will be a resource as people have to do a formal survey. As you can see, many levels of bullets. And lots of detail. Then we go into straw polls and how to construct and conduct a straw poll, which is through currently Zoom, and how to, and I'm sorry, these slides are horrible. We need to make this better for next weekend, but it's all detail that you probably don't need right now anyway, but it goes through how you set them up on Zoom and how you, how you write the questions for Zoom. It requires less thought than a formal survey, but try to have things like a separate question for each poll, that kind of thing, using the Zoom terminology, etc. Not always possible. I violated that when I did our Zoom last meeting. But how you can, the options you have for types of questions and how to write them so people don't get mad, let them, don't require an answer, that kind of thing. Avoiding questions with implied facts. I think the example we heard is, have you stopped beating your wife? That kind of thing. A no-win question. So just those are just intended to be helpful for people who are in that situation, kind of a guidebook. And now we're done with policy or procedures. Any questions on procedures in general? And we've already gone through the references. So that's really all I have. So I guess any specific issues, any general thoughts on this document? Let me just share the document itself real fast.
There's an amazing amount of work here. It's a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Impressive document.
Very, but
I'm amazed, what you thought of,
Yeah, we were
everything
taking
you can see.
notes last year during the bylaws development and saying, well, we'll put that in the policies and procedures. And then this year we took a bunch of those notes. We anticipate next year having a lot less work to do as a subcommittee, but
Yeah.
there is still a lot that we have not done yet that we'll still be working on. But this is kind of the overall contents. We have policies, procedures, and references. So and you can go directly with the table of contents to that particular thing.
wow.
What is session 2 for next Saturday?
So it's going to be basically this. What we did was we currently have a feedback session for a Saturday morning and then the next Wednesday night. And so we're anticipating, last year with bylaws, we had 9 feedback sessions and each one covered different article of the bylaws or articles of the bylaws. We were originally going to do that with the policies and procedures, but it looks like we just haven't had that much interest. And so we've thought about with Saturday morning and Wednesday night of just breaking it down into specific sections. But the feedback we've been getting is they don't really want to go into that much detail. So for Saturday morning, I think we're just going to kind of do this again, unless you think we need to break it down some other way. And then Wednesday night, basically do the same thing, but we may change that depending on what we get on Saturday morning. We could just do something that if someone wants more detail, we could take that and do that Wednesday night. We're being
I thought
kind
the
of
level of
flexible.
detail was good.
Did you? Okay. We don't need to get too specific, eyes spinning on the stuff. So, so thank you. Thank you for that input. And then, we'll see how many people come. I'm guessing there will not be very many people coming. Then we have another one scheduled for May 17th, which would be 2 weeks before the vote. And that should be a pretty well complete document that we'll also submit to the county. If the county doesn't have time to get back to us before May 31st, I don't think it's a big deal. We can just have a motion to adopt with pending approval by the county and make any adjustments necessary. So I think that'll be okay. As Michael said, he'll be at a Cirque du Soleil performance on that day, so he'll miss that great meeting. But anyway, I'm anticipating things are going to go okay with it, but I know we really value your input. You guys are the ones who are going to be benefiting the most from it. So,
Chris, your comment, thank you very much for your comment. It is a great document. But there's a lot of experience in this group of people, and what's really cool is that we actually enjoy each other, and that and for something like this, that's really important. But and we've talked about this in the past, that this document is really the organization, and none of us are going to be here forever, and so it really does need to be solid enough to be handed off, so that the next group continues on and the community grows, and that's really what it's about. I think also this document is good enough that it can be a model for other communities around the county and perhaps even the state.
Absolutely.
I do think that the county thinks that this document is really well done, and they do acknowledge that, and they do. I think they share that a little bit with other CACs, and like Michael said, none of us are going to be around forever, and this document makes whoever sits in these seats down the road, it gives them some good guardrails or some good guidance about how to function. It's just really good. So
yeah, thank you. I think Guy made the comment in the membership meeting that if they'd had this when he had been chair years before it, they would have done things differently, because they just didn't really know what they should do. So in terms of procedures, I thought that was a nice comment.
Hey, next Saturday I'll be traveling in a plane, so I won't be able to attend session 2.
Okay, thank you. I hope you're going somewhere fun and not just for work, but for fun and for
Mexico
work.
fishing trip.
oh, good.
Nice.
And what's your retirement? When do you retire, Chris?
In September.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, great.
You could join our bylaws subcommittee. How about secretary?
It'll be easier, Chris.
So, well, we really appreciate that feedback. If you have anything individual, please feel free to reach out to us. We really value your input, and a big shout out to Mark. He's been attending almost all of our meetings and giving us lots of good feedback, and in between as well. So, and Rand, I just want to thank you too, because you guys had to kind of live with some of this as we've been drafting. So we really appreciate your support as well. So.
Oh, certainly. No, I echo Chris's comment that and Guy's, that if we had a body of knowledge that we could refer to, especially on the surveys and straw polls, that we did a survey for over 2 years and it was never used because everyone said, well, that's this or that's that. We didn't have something to go, well, we followed these procedures. This is credible. Anyway, it's a significant body of work that will be valuable for anyone who's trying to set out and do something. They have a strong reference and a pool of deeper information behind that gives ability to make decisions and go through with things in a more professional manner.
Well, thank you. And I just remembered, we do have one more document to share. Sorry, it will be brief, but Gary and I came up with this yesterday. So When we did the secretary and communications task force stuff last year, the communications task force was new to trying to move this document around. To try to alleviate all the work of the secretary, take away all the having the secretary have to do everything. We did some simplification in the bylaws, but we purposely left a lot of it because we knew we were going to create the policies and procedures. So we needed to have that first to dump a lot of this into. So we have kind of two parts of this recommendation, and one is the bylaws change, and the other is the policies and procedures creation of this. So this goes into the job description. So on the bylaws part of it, we would just change it to this. And is this the clean cut? I don't think this is clean cut. I think I can just go in and show you what it looks like here. Yeah, so this is what it looks like currently in the bylaws. And what we're talking about is actually taking out all this detail and adding in that it's in the policies, procedures, and references, and then moving it down to the policies, procedures, and references section for a new secretary job description, so that the bylaws part of it looks really simple.
Yeah, that seems to make sense.
So it ends up looking like that, much cleaner. And then the new job description under the policies, procedures in the references section that you saw those. I'm going to want to get to with the rest of you individually to write up your sections on the references section, but we'll do that later. This one was more key because it's more complicated and because we need a secretary to could have a job description. So we did have, Gary and I did have a couple of questions yesterday on the financial reports. Chris, you probably have financial reports somewhere. Can you send them to Gary so that they can be part of the minutes and are posted in our archives?
What is meant by financial reports? Like our budgets?
Yeah, like a monthly status report. Like you'll say every month in a meeting how much money we have and what was spent, and any donations that were received or income that was received. Just a simple statement like that that would be in writing.
So
And
what
then
I'm,
an end of the year report.
What I'm
Is
doing
this
now is
going forward or in arrears? Or both?
I think whatever you could do. So
I mean, how far
if
back do we need to go?
I think that's up to you, and
Okay.
if you could do it for this fiscal year, that'd be great. But it's kind of described in the bylaws in your area. But if it's a big pain, if you haven't been doing it, it's a big pain to create it. I think that would be up to Mark.
Yeah, no, I've got it. It's just my own personal notes. I never intended it to be, public
so Chris,
beyond, the verbal
Chris, do you
communication
have,
during your meetings.
Chris, do you have log-on capabilities to our Google Drive?
I'm sure that I do.
Because all I really need, I think all we would need is for you to create a folder in there somewhere.
Mhm.
Information is, and then all the secretary would need to do is just grab the link to that folder and then put the link wherever it needs to go. If there's some spot in the archive, maybe the archive section of the website.
Okay.
That keeps that simple. What I'm doing right now is for each meeting minutes of the regular meetings, I'm just taking your statements on beginning budget, cash inflows, outflows, and ending balance. And that goes in the meeting minutes, and that's basically our financial report. That's the extent of it for right now.
Yeah, there's not much more to it than that.
Yeah, I know we have a very simple financial picture, but so it could be really simple. I mean, if it would help to create a form for you or something, we could do that. But just basically a beginning balance,
Mhm.
any expenditures or income during that period, which would be probably 2 months, it would be between membership meetings, and and then an ending balance. It would be really simple.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be nothing that should cause a lot of issues.
Yeah.
And then, Gary, all this came from the previous bylaws, the earlier bylaws, and we're going general history of the NCAC. Where is that? So I know Tom
What
has
is-
some kind of a history in the community plan that had been in the earlier community plan that he put into an appendix. I don't know if that's what we mean by this, or if there's something else that, like, is there a history of the NCAC that shows the previous officers or what we accomplished, or Rand, do you know if there, you'd be the one most likely probably to know about that.
Well, the history that's there is, I think, kind of borrowed from the NCA history, because there's just no place to find any of this recorded, because there were no body, the sewer and water board were the only political bodies that would do anything like that. And I don't know if they have anything on their records. Where there is a currently updated one, kind of Stephen Beckham's take that he did for the book, the photo book that
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah.
kind of in production. I have been trying to get with this guy from the Grand Ronde tribe to see if there's anything about the past of Native Americans in the area. It's very sad history as to why there isn't any record.
Mm.
So I don't have anything to contribute on that front at this point in time. So what's there is kind of the history according to historians, which is always useful to some degree, but there's more questions that are not answered than are. And so it's just kind of borrowed from here and there as far as.
Yeah, and I think we're just talking about the NCAC history itself. Not
Uh-huh.
necessarily in general, but so I don't know if there's anything in the paper records or that. So we don't know if we should take that out or if we want to try to develop something in the future. But we just thought we'd ask you guys.
Well, you've got Bill and Guy and maybe a couple other people, Bill Bush and Guy and myself and Mark. There's not that many folks, and you'd probably have to go through minutes and stuff to sort out what the
Yeah.
big decisions of that period
Mhm.
were. And so I don't think
Mhm.
that's going to happen, but.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So maybe we just leave that as a
Mhm.
future project when we have nothing else to do.
Well, I
Okay.
mean, you get those four or five guys in a room and some good
Well,
whiskey, you could have a history.
yeah, okay, all right. Maybe we have a task force to write a history or something next year. That's something to
Okay.
think about. Okay. So that's kind of the secretary thing. And then the communications task force, again, we have in the bylaws, we are it currently has this in the bylaws for the communications task force. So we're talking about, let's get rid of all that detail and put it in the policies and procedures and just say it's going in the policies and procedures now that we have a
Okay.
place to put it. So that will be a bylaws change. Any objection there? And then it just goes in here. So, so parts of this, like the communications task force, is to maintain the NCAC electronic database and archives and put it in a local NCAC storage device. Actually, Gary has convinced me that we should take this out. Because, whoops, I don't have change tracking on. So that there really isn't a good reason to do that. So particularly if the county starts taking it over, but we're not doing it currently. And I'll talk about it with the committee at our meeting, but we had kind of adamantly felt like we should have a couple of backup options. One is the cloud storage and one is local storage device. But Gary, I don't know if you want to talk about why, but you have really good reasons why we don't do that.
A lot of you can't maintain chain of custody as it's got to be passed from the one secretary to the next as they come and go. We don't know how it's been treated. It's a physical device, and so it's it's susceptible to all the problems that can happen with any physical device. It can break, it can get lost, it can be damaged. And there's no reason to think that, you know, especially if you're going with a big reputable cloud storage company like Google, Amazon, or whoever we would decide to do, that they're going to, you know, I mean, that's their business. They don't lose data. They may keep you from it if you don't pay them, you know, if they have some kind of payment thing. But other than that, there's no reason to think that the cloud storage would be an issue. As far now, there may be instances, there's rare instances where, let's say, for an individual board member, your Spectrum cable goes out for a day and you can't get to the internet, but you really need to get something finished. And so you say, well, wow, I really wish I had that local copy of the bylaws, and I don't have it. That's something maybe for each individual to decide about. But as far as an NCAC specified backup device, that's not something that I don't think that there's of no benefit for us.
So, so that's good. And then, thank you, Gary. And then we have a different section that will specify where we say as described in this PP&Rs. We've already gone through the procedures where those are listed. We did have a question about the notices are sent by Tillamook County. Why do I have this note? How did this come about?
Well, I think we were just talking about, we weren't sure where, I mean, we came into it that it was just always a thing that Tillamook County was sending an email to the main NCAC Gmail account. We would take that and just pop that notice onto the website. But we didn't know, was that a request or a requirement from, and
That's right.
Of course, are from the Department of Community Development. So it's basically one of Sarah Ebsher's employees that sends us, and nobody else. And so it's like, okay, well.
And then you're posting them and reporting them in the meetings. So
Yeah, and once again, like I mentioned earlier, we don't have a dedicated web page for that. All we do is we put it at the bottom of the homepage.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments on this new stuff? So what we're going to end up having when we do the proposal is a set of bylaws changes that we noticed, along with then the new policies, procedures, and references. And all the bylaw stuff are really minor things. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay, well, thank you guys for hanging in there. Any other final comments, suggestions, criticisms, concerns?
No, this is
Okay,
good.
and I think we are done for our section.
Do you
Go back,
need
throw it
a,
back to you, Mark.
you
What?
need a, you
Okay.
need a glass of water there, Nancy?
No, I think I do. I think coffee or maybe a glass of wine when I'm done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, well, thank you, Nancy, for that. I think I don't see nobody's on for comments. There's time for comments here. So I think with that, we are gonna adjourn. So hope everybody has a great rest of the day and a good weekend for the rest of the weekend. So
All
we'll see
right.
everybody.